We're in conversation today with Mr. Qais Sharif, the Vice President for Display Product Line at Visteon. Mr. Sharif, thank you very much for taking out the time and for talking to us.
Thank you very much.
So I would want to begin, how are cockpit displays driving the overall cabin experience inside modern cars? And if you could shed light on some of the latest trends which are there in the market.
Sure. The automotive market is probably one of the fastest growing technology market in the world. It's fast changing. And if you think about your automotive cockpit nowadays, it is more of a total user experience and a digital cockpit where in the past, people would talk about how many horsepower you have or how fast your car goes. Now, when you get in your car, people are talking about how large the displays are. Do you have connectivity? What kind of experience or design you have? So what we are seeing in the automotive world, the experience that people have had with mobile phones and tablets is driving the experience in the cockpit electronics. The consumers are expecting nicer design, higher quality displays, improved image experience. And that coupled with the advancement in ADAS is driving the demand for larger size displays, higher resolution in the digital cockpit. So a combination between safety, ADAS driven, and the consumer experience expectation to have better performance in their vehicle is demanding a higher perceptual quality in the cockpit electronics. And this is a trend that is moving quickly in the digital cockpit. If you recall, if you got in a car, if you had a 6-inch or a 7-inch display in the center stack, we call them a CID. Not too long ago, that was perceived as high tech. But now you have displays of 12.3 or 14-inch, or multiple displays in the same cockpit. So it's moving quite a bit from what it was a few years ago to really a high-tech, high perceptual quality images in the cockpit.
Right. But Mr. Sharif, don't you think that multiple screens are also becoming a cause of a safety hazard, perhaps? And what is the importance of UI and intuitive design when we talk about these large screens? And in that regard, does Visteon have any innovations to offer to the market?
Absolutely. So the multiple displays, you think about what's the use for the display. So for your digital cluster, you have your safety information. You have a lot more information that can help you control and manage your vehicle. So in a sense, it's actually improving your safety from communicating more of the critical functions to you. On the other hand, when you have a multiple displays or larger displays, what do people do nowadays? If you don't know where you're going, you use your cell phone. So you're going, taking your eye off the driving attention. But with having a larger display, the second display, what is used mostly for right now is navigation, communication, control of the vehicle, VAC, and other functionality. So I personally think it's actually enhancing safety because it's providing more of a better experience for the driver to pay attention and get more information on the conditions of the vehicle. And what we're seeing in addition in cockpit electronics right now, the implementation of a third display, which we call the passenger display. So this is a trend that is starting in the higher end vehicles, and it's definitely will eventually move into mid-range vehicles. And the use for the third display, for example, what we call PID or passenger display, is the it is to provide more of an entertainment experience for the passenger. And this is again driven by connectivity, fast mobile connection. But in most countries, if not all, they require minimum distraction to the driver. So when the vehicle is moving, you need to minimize the amount of entertainment you're showing or the visibility of the display to the driver. So for that kind of application, we at Visteon have developed what we call active privacy, because you need to think about the experience in the vehicle. If you're sitting when you're driving, you don't want the passengers to be paying attention to the movie that your spouse or your friend or family are watching. But when you're stopped in a safe place, maybe everybody else wants to watch the movie with you. So the ability to block the image or the entertainment that being shown in when the vehicle is moving, and then the ability to also allow it to be seen is a science and a technology that Visteon has developed to minimize the distraction to the driver. And this is, it takes a lot of optical, mechanical design to allow the image to go on and off. We actually just released a press release about the technology yesterday, describing about the capabilities of Visteon in this technology.
That's true. That's true. And you mentioned about minimum distraction for the driver. So in that regard, is voice also going to become one of the prominent modes of communicating with these infotainment screens going forward?
Absolutely. Voice is one of the prominent or potential solutions. That, in addition to the control units, you've seen in many vehicles either a touch screen or a control unit by the shifter or in between to control the multiple functionality of the displays. But voice is also one of the key things, because as you think about as the cockpit grows and you have multiple displays, you can't actually reach everything. So voice is one of the features that is a potential usage for that kind of application in the vehicle.
Sure. And with all these large screens, coming into the cars, Mr. Sharif, so do you also believe that there is going to be some sort of regulations also capping the number of screens or the size of screens going forward?
I don't think the size or the number of displays is going to be capped. The one thing you need to keep in mind is not to obstruct the viewability of the driver. So design is really critical and important. So what the OEMs are trying to do nowadays is to differentiate their products. So if you are sitting in a Mahindra, you want to know that this is a Mahindra designed cockpit. If you're sitting in a Mercedes, you want to have that. So the design is a key factor for the automotive OEMs to give a full experience and to communicate their branding to the customers. So that has a lot of implication on how many displays or how many the style, so it's the number of displays. Actually, what we see is increasing in the vehicles. And as I mentioned earlier, we also see the higher resolution, higher perceptual quality. When I say perceptual quality, it's higher color saturation, it's better black uniformity and black contrast on the display. If you think of your laptop screen, it's kind of grayish, and you don't really have a vivid black back image on that. So improving that contrast ratio becomes important. But also with the style and the design in the vehicle, if you look at some of the cars right now, you see the displays are embedded into the cockpit, and there is a kind of a cover to protect them from the sunlight, because Unlike when you're looking at your phone, if the sun is behind, shining on your phone, you just turn around. You can't do that in a car. So in a car, you either have sometimes the sun in your eyes, or the sun is coming from behind you and shining on your digital cluster or on your CID. What designers want to do is actually bring the display out and make it look as a beautiful thin borders. With that, you have more exposure to the sun. So this is a challenging technology, has been for the automotive market, but also for the LCD technology or display technology in general. So at Visteon, we have developed the technology we call True Color. We have developed our own software hardware solution that we can improve the image of the display under direct sunlight. If the sun is shining into your cockpit and it's washing it off, washing the content off, we can improve the image without changing the color and the branding of the OEM. Every OEM have a special blue or red or special HMI, as we say, human machine interface, to communicate their styling and communicate their information. So what we do is we improve the image without increasing the power consumption or the backlight brightness, because if you increase that generates heat, generates other issues. And as we look into the future, EVs, power consumption, every little amp counts. So you want to improve the image without increasing the power consumption or increasing the brightness. So this is a new technology that we developed, that we can improve the image to make it more visible for the driver. And think about the safety as well. That improves the safety for the driver. And we can do that all without increasing the backlight power.
Right. So, you're talking about the safety of the driver. So in that case, are we going to see the physical buttons? I mean, are they going to be completely going away from cars in the coming future?
That is a trend we're seeing more and more, where people can are designing the nice, sleek design without buttons. We implement touch screens, and again, as we talked, either voice or control unit that you can communicate with the device without the buttons. So it is, if you look at your phone right now, the goal is to minimize the number of buttons as much as possible.
Right. And Mr. Sharif, so, talking about regulations, so with connected cars and, all these, connectivity coming inside vehicles, cybersecurity also becomes one of the key challenges going forward. So what's the update there? Are we still going to be, relying on regulations wherein, OEMs will be limited to, the usability of the consumer data? Or are they going to be taking voluntary steps in terms of, how much data they will be, acquiring from the end user, and, in what sense that data will be used at their end?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think this is a point in the industry that it's going to continue to be debated. At Visteon, we provide the technology and the communication. We don't maintain or keep any of the passenger or the driver's information. That information is typically controlled by the OEMs. But it's security, privacy is going to be continuously debated on how much data should the OEMs or the application that you use collect and track about the driver. So this is a topic that is definitely will be one of the topics to watch for.
Right. You also mentioned about EVs, the low power consumption from these displays. So going forward, we are also going to see EVs and a lot of ADAS features built into them. maybe the ORVMs will be getting replaced by some rear-facing cameras as well. So is that going to also see more screens? I mean, do we have like a separate dedicated screens for the ORVM as well, and perhaps the IRVM as well in future?
Yeah, so I think in EVs you will have more displays and you will have more cameras. If you think about most of the newer cars, on the average they have at least 4 cameras, and some they have 8 cameras or more. So whether it's for safety or it's for communicating around with the vehicle and understanding the usage for it. So I believe that you will still see more technology and more displays, especially in EVs, and that as a future market, it's a growth market for the Visteons of the world as well as the OEMs.
Right. And is it a challenge, Mr. Sharif, to develop these kind of solutions which sap low power from the overall propulsion system inside an EV?
Absolutely. Developing low power technology is always a challenge on any of the systems. So this is something that we continue to drive and use it as a differentiation for a competitive advantage for the products that we provide, but it's also the demand that you see from all OEMs. Because at the end of the day, as we talked, every amp, every volt counts to increase the range, reduce the weight, improve the cost, or reduce the cost of the vehicle. So power consumption will continue to be a big challenge for everybody. We want to have the longest range, the lowest power, at the most competitive price.
Right. And what the industry is also facing in form of a challenge right now is the global chip shortage. So how is Visteon coping up with it? And is reducing the screen size also one of the ways of dealing with the issue right now?
Yeah, we unfortunately have our own share of pains with the shortage of the semiconductor. We work closely with our suppliers and our partners as well to mitigate the shortages. But the shortages, I think, will recover, will be improved hopefully by the end of this year. And by next year, hopefully all of that will be better. Changing the size of the display, the size will depend, you might use less chips, but if you think about the designs for the OEMs for the vehicle, if you decide, let's say on a screen size and design today, this product will not ship till 2 years later. So we're working now on vehicles that are 2025, 2026 model years. So you can imagine the implication that we're having today in a shortage of semiconductor. Not much can be done about it, about the size of the display, but you're thinking about what's to be done for 2024, 2025 timeframe. Overall, so we have to move into a newer fab technology to improve the availability of components. Some of the shortages are actually like in power circuits and more older generation technology for the semiconductors. So as we design new product, we look into the more higher node, higher process technology, and a newer semiconductor chips to implement in the future designs.
Okay, and so that is going to significantly, reduce the reliance, the dependency on the older generation chips, and going forward, we might, see the situation, getting better.
Right, and additionally, we see significant amount of investment into new fabs of semiconductors going on in the next few years. So that will also help provide more capacity for the future.
Right, right. And Mr. Sharif, we're also seeing screens making their way into two-wheelers, and especially electric two-wheelers. So is
Yes.
that also an area of focus for Visteon?
Absolutely. We have seen screens that 7-inch, 12-inch displays into two-wheelers. This is also a business that we are engaged in developing right now. So the screens are going to make it into two-wheelers as well, and also larger displays. And electrification is also another product that we develop and support for Visteon. Wireless BMS, wireless battery management system, is one of the future product that we think is going to continue to grow. It's a product we provide right now into some of the electric vehicles in the US. So for example, the electric Hummer that GM announced that uses our technology, the new Silverado and others. So this is new technology where we can manage the battery management of the charges and cooling and the safety functions of, if it's batteries heating too much, we can help communicate to the vehicle, to the OEMs to take control of that. And we see that moving into two-wheelers as well.
Right. And what are some of the fundamental differences, in the screens that you're offering for the passenger vehicles and two-wheelers? Because in the two-wheeler, the screen is completely exposed to the environment, it's completely exposed to direct sunlight.
Right.
So is there a difference in terms of, the technology itself? And going forward, what would be the trends when we talk about, screens in two-wheelers?
Right. So one of the technologies that we talked about earlier, True Color, for example, under direct sunlight, that's a great application for two-wheelers, because unlike in a car, you have no protection from the environment or the sun. So that kind of technology is very applicable and useful for two-wheelers. And in general, the display technology itself is pretty much the same. But what you need to do in a two-wheeler is the environmental protection. You're under rain a lot, so you will need to protect the packaging of the system where you don't have any water getting into the system. You need to manage also the temperature, because when if the sun is sitting, if you have your phone or your iPad sitting under direct sunlight, you will see sometimes a warning, it's too hot, it's too hot. So we need to make sure the design, the mechanical and the structural design, dissipates the heat quickly and safely. So two-wheelers have a little more challenging environment than the four-wheeler vehicles. And those are the things we have to keep in mind when we're considering two-wheelers application.
Right. And if I may take you back to the previous question for one more second, you mentioned about, investing into new fab technologies going forward. So could you just take us into the technicalities of it? Where are we right now? Are we on 7 nanometers? And, going forward, where are we headed? So if you can explain that a little bit.
Some of the semiconductor components that we see in the automotive are on like 40 nanometers. Okay. And so it's really that many generation back. It's 7 nanometer would be wonderful thing. You get so many more chips per wafer in a 7 nanometer versus a 40 nanometer. The other thing is it depends on the device itself. If you look at the devices for the semiconductor, in some cases, you might be able to get 20,000 pieces per wafer. In other application, maybe you get 40,000 pieces. So it depends on the device itself and the how complex and complicated it is.
Sure. And Mr. Sharif, my final question. So, how are you leveraging the talent that is there in India to develop these solutions for the global market?
We have been in India for 25 years, and we continue to grow. So we have been focused on growing our capabilities in India for not only just to address the Indian market as well. Our team, we have several design centers. Our teams in India support global applications. We have software teams that are supporting software requirements for, all our customers globally. We have hardware engineers, we have mechanical engineers, we have display engineers, we have optics engineer. So we are investing in India and developing and more and more talent. And we foresee our capabilities and resources in India to continue on growing. So we're hiring. So, and if anybody is interested to be in the greatest, more exciting technology, please let us know. Come and join Visteon, because this is exciting new technologies we're developing, technologies of the future.
Great. On that note, thank you so much, Mr. Sharif, for taking out the time for talking to us. It was a lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks again.